Hi all, good evening. My name's Debbie. I'm a Live for Love TV subscriber on YouTube. It's a very informative channel. So when you have a spare moment, please like, share and subscribe. Live for Love TV. Thank you.
Hi, Live for Love TV, 24th day, 11th month of the 21st year. It's inside the 21st century. Hope everyone's doing well out there. Okay, Live for Love and its intro. What is Live for Love? I said that in the first intro, but now we've been at the game a little bit longer now. We've been in it. We've been in this for a few months now, and it's time to really put the cat amongst the pigeons and to explain a little bit about why Live for Love is Live for Love and how I came to this concept and why I use those words in particular. Some people talk about awakening and insights and all these type of stuff. I'm old enough to have been through many things throughout life, whether I've had a proper awakening or any true insights, that's up to you to make judgments of. But Live for Love is about living for love. Why do I say that? I say that because I don't know any other thing in the universe that you can live for. I've looked at it all. I've looked across the board. I've listened to everything people have ever said. I've read as much as I possibly can up to this date. I've reasoned with people on as many continents as I can. And I've listened to the good and the bad, and I've moved with the good and the bad. And I've realized that from my perspective, that there is nothing else that you can live for. There's nothing else. It's not that it's the best thing to live for. I'm not saying that at all. That's not what I'm actually saying. I'm saying there is nothing else that you can actually live for. And no matter how you try to live for something else, somewhere along the line, you're going to fall foul of trying to live for somebody that you love. So if you don't live for love, as I'm saying that it was meant to be, some people, they could be the baddest man in town, but they'll tell you, boy, I'm going to live for my children, I'm going to live for my family. I'm going to live for, he's trying to tell you he's living for love because he's found nothing else. And that's the same with anybody and anytime, anywhere in history, that love is the only thing that you can live for. The question is, what exactly is this love? Now, love is subjective like every other word in the universe, as far as I know. It's a subjective. And when I say every word in the universe, I mean, it's subjective. It's a person's opinion and thoughts on what that actually is. Sometimes I speak to people about subjects, even on Live for Love TV, and some clever person may say, oh, that's your subjective opinion. And I look at them and I think to myself, should I answer this person? Or will I be just as dumb as them if I answer them? Because they think they're clever by saying it's my subjective opinion. Well, I'd like anybody, anywhere, right across Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or anywhere, any scientist in the world, any religious person in the world, anybody, anywhere on the planet, to answer the question, is there any opinion that cannot be subjective? Any opinion. Every single opinion is objective. Every conversation you have becomes a subject, therefore it becomes subjective. The only way you can have an objective is when I do this. So if I point, then when you look where my finger is pointing, you'll see an object. I don't say anything, that's objective. If I point over there, you look at it, it's objective. Somebody else looks at that finger, it's objective. But the minute I start to talk about that thing, whether it be a tree, the sun, anybody, a human being, it becomes a subjective view and a subjective opinion. So for all those people who are very, I'd have to say unintelligent, that try to put you down when you say something by saying, oh, that's your subjective opinion. That's your subject. I mean, it's so silly, it's laughable. But anyway, let's move on from there. So what I'm saying now is the word love is going to be subjective because it's a subject. You can't say that I say what love is, then you say, no, love something else. And somebody, well, that's exactly right. Love is many things to many different people. Exactly, that's what subjective means. So I'm saying from this perspective that I, as you see me sitting here right now, I am love. I am the process of love. I'm the process, because love has two stages. It has the processing stage and the entity stage. The entity stage is when it stands alone. People like to use the word as God or universe or some superpower, whatever. They can use any word they want, but they're saying an entity. It's an entity. It's a power unto itself. But when you're talking about anything else, anything you can see, touch, feel, look around, these are processes. The tree it goes through a process from birth to death, from young to old, from, winter to summer, just like the weather, I do, you do. We're all processing, and we're processes. That's what we are. So we're the process of the entity. So every process at some point must go back to its entity stage. That's been said in many different ways for thousands of years. And I've tried to say it as simple as I can, but it's probably not simple to a lot of people. But we're processing beings. We're always thinking, just like a computer. We cannot stop thinking. A man cannot really turn off his thinking. He just thinks. Even when he's asleep, he's thinking. He can't stop thinking. When he wants to stop thinking, he can't stop thinking. If he tries to stop thinking, he thinks even more. He's a thinking being. That's what he's doing, and he's because that's what he does. He processes. He's a process, and until he's no longer a process, he will be thinking. She will be thinking. That's what we do. So people shouldn't be worried about being a process. We are the process of what I say is the entity, which is love. We're one in the same thing, but we're not the same thing. We're one in the same thing because one thing made itself into many different forms so that it could process. So everything can be a process. Everything is being processed inside that same understanding that it's love. Everything is. When you look at somebody and you think that that person's bad or wicked or no good or negative, they come out of that same entity that is love. But what's happened to us is that the further we get away from understanding ourselves is the more we become almost the opposite to ourselves. So this is why the process of awakening of consciousness becomes important, because when you're conscious, when you awaken to yourself. You don't awaken to anything else. You awaken to yourself. I'll describe it like this for those people who are struggling with even what I'm saying now. Whenever you have a dream and you dream about yourself, and in that dream, you have females, males, cousins, brothers, grandfathers, people who have passed away, all the characters in your dream, you think that's your grandmother that was in your dream, but it wasn't your grandmother. It was you thinking as if you were your grandmother. That's all it was. If you have a lion in the dream, it's you as if you were a lion. There was no actual lion in your dream. You didn't see a lion in your dream. You made up that vision because that's what you are, a processing being. You can do things like that. And that's what you do. Everything in your dream is you. Now that sounds hard to believe. That's going to be for some people a mind blower. How can it be? How can I be if I see a pretty woman in my dream, how can I be also her? You're not her. You've made the picture of her and you're thinking as if you were her. That's what you're able to do. That's what you're doing. Everybody in your dream is you because you're a processing being. Just like every figure, say, for instance, in a computer is a computer. It's ones and zeros. 99, 79, the answer. When it comes up with a figure, you give it a weird figure in the times and it may come up with some figure of 77788. That's still the one and zeros. Nothing's changed. It's just that it's put it into a different form. And you can do that because you're superior to any computer. And you're a process. As I said, the universe itself is going through, is a process, not just going through a process. It is the process. And it's a process of that entity. So there's nothing bad. We may think there's something bad, but there's nothing bad in that universe. There can't be anything bad unless the entity is bad. And the entity can't make bad unless it has something bad in itself. So the entity is not bad. The entity is love, and everything else is love. But to understand this, what's going on, this is where people come into this consciousness, awakening, and maybe the woo-woo stuff that sounds very ridiculous. But what it is that some people have realized the simple things that I'm saying now, that you are. When they say you are the all and you're the everything, it's just saying that you are part of the entity. You're not separate to the entity in so much as you don't have any connection to the entity. The entity has no connection to you. You are part of that same all. So when people say you are the all, they're saying you're part of the all as a small being. just like a worm is part of the all. Remember, a worm is in the ground, and as that worm is in that ground, it's wriggling around and doing what it does and having its little, feces it's putting in the ground. But if all of those worms were taken out of the ground, there'd be nothing able to grow into the earth. The worm doesn't know that's what it's doing. The worm's not conscious that it's keeping all the plants and the flowers and everything regenerate. It has no idea. And does the bee know that it's pollinating all the plants as well and the nectar and everything? Does it know it's doing that? No, it has no idea. It's just part of the process to doing the thing. And it's just like me or you, we're process. We're part of a process. And as the time goes on, people look back 1,000 years and 1,000 years from now, like we look back 1,000 years now and think, what were those people for? They were part of the process so that you could be at this stage now. And you're part of the process. And it's constant. But you don't have to worry about what's going to happen to you because you have to go back to the entity because there's nothing else. You're either processing or you're part of the entity. The entity doesn't need to process. If it needed to process, it wouldn't have created anything that needed to be processed. It can't process. The entity cannot process in its entity stage. It has to produce something that then can go on to process. Can be born, live, die, get old, regenerate. It's all this stuff. Think the way we think. So that's what's happening in this universe. And that's why, though I've never brought it up before, that's why Live for Love TV really came about. Though we do lots of subjects and we go into different things, it really came about trying to explain to people that you're really okay. But you can't believe you're okay. And you're not going to be okay because I say you're okay. You're only going to be okay when you know you're okay. I'm telling you you're okay, but you're probably not going to feel it. You have to feel it. You have to be in tune with it. It's the only way you're going to be okay. And have that feeling of being okay. And when you're okay, you're okay. That's what it means. When you're okay, you're okay. There's nothing anyone can say to you or come across to you or do to you that's really going to take you away from the okay state. So you're okay. You're love. You're processing. You'll do the right thing because your thought patterns will be right. You won't be working out what to do. Like right now, I'm not really working out what I need to say to you. I'm just going to say what's coming and let it come. In the first intro, I said very little. I didn't bring up these things because you didn't have any recollection of me. You hadn't heard my voice very often. You didn't know who was looking at you or whatsoever. And I certainly haven't given you any life story and about how my stages of life and how I got to here. But no matter how I got here to where I am today, I'm here. You're here. Some of you are going to pick up on this, and some of you it will move you a little bit, and you'll find your own way. And some of you will just keep floating around like a ship in the ocean without a rudder, and wherever the wind blows, that's where you go. When man A says A, you run with him. When these people say this, you run with that. When this happens, you run with that. You hear something on the news, you become terrified. You become frightened. You hear a hurricane coming, you wonder if this is the time when you're going to die. This is not something that love considers. Love doesn't wonder when it's going to die. Love doesn't die. Love is an entity. Love doesn't die. How can it die? And even those of you who loved your family members, you kind of know it in a sort of superficial way, but you don't know it. You say, oh, they're in heaven, or I love them and they're somewhere alive. And if you keep them alive in your memory and all, it's all a little bit of a play on words. The truth is that thing is that you knew that you called a person is part of the entity. It's part of that entity. There's nothing else that could happen to it. There's nothing else can happen to it. It has to go back to the entity. It's either in process or it's in the entity stage. There's only two stages. That's why a man could say, I and my father is one. That's a man who understands the entity and understands the process. Because it really is one. It's one in the same, but it looks different. If we were all rolled up into the entity, there'd be nothing to see. There'd be nothing to hear, nothing to touch, no relationship, nothing to have. We'd just be entity, just love, pure ether, pure energy. But to have some feelings like you have now, which is good and bad, high and low, some people want this to be all over. But people only want things to be over when things appear to be going wrong for them. When things are going well for them, they want it to go on forever. We're all like that. When you taste something that you like, you want more and more and more of it till that you become sick, you get so much of it. But when you don't like something, you spit it out. And that's exactly how life is for most of us, that we want it to go on and on and on when it's going well. But when we're embarrassed and somebody's told us about something and someone's embarrassed us and our money's gone and our friends are gone and family gone, we just want it to be over. And that's because that's process. That's what process does. It has all the thoughts that you could have from A to Z. It's processing. It's a computer. It can't process one thing without another. People who understand the book they call the Tao Te Ching, which I've also spoken about in the past, will understand that the people who wrote that book, whether it's one person or many, was far higher in their play on words than I am. And they certainly was able to coin a lot of the things that I'm saying now in a better way than I'm saying them now. The Tao Te Ching, or the Tao, because it's very, very in understanding that the Tao is saying that above God is the Tao. It's the entity, it's the everything. Because what's happened with the concept in religion and in God is that we've put our processing mind to that thing. So now whatever we're talking about, it becomes what we subjectively think about. It's not no longer the entity. It becomes a God of our thinking. And that's easy to test, because whenever people talk about God, it's always the people they don't like that God doesn't like. Think about it. If God doesn't like that brother over there, so he's ungodly. If God doesn't like these sexually so-called depraved people, they're ungodly. So whoever you don't like, that's who God don't like, because that's your thinking. That's your processing. That's not the entity. The entity never said that to you. That's some man or somebody making it out that what they don't like, they want it to be that God doesn't like. And you can't control the entity. The entity is not part of the process that me and you are. We're the processing beings. So we can say and do almost anything we want. The entity doesn't do things like that. It's pure love. So it doesn't have those thoughts. It doesn't have those thoughts. You understand? We are the thinking thing. Then we put those thoughts towards the entity. That's the problem. The entity doesn't need to think about anything. Everything is everything. That's what the entity is. Everything is everything. So anyway, I won't go on too much about that now. I would like to see if anybody does pick up on what I'm saying. And if you don't, no, it's no problem. It's all good. There'll be other things coming on Live for Love TV. And if you don't like Live for Love TV, there's so many things out there that you can listen to. And so long, just remember, don't listen to things that make you upset and make you unhappy, and then you have to go into the comments and say something negative. What are you listening to it for? You embarrass yourself when you do that. And I don't know what they call them, blog. What do they call them? I don't know what they call them. The people that say that. There's a word for them on the net. But when I read them, I think, how sad. If I don't like something, I just turn it off and go somewhere else. When you're dealing with love, you look for where love is, and when you're dealing with something else other than love, you look for where that something else is within you, and then you try and project it out into something else. So if you don't like what you hear here, you can put your comments if you don't like them, no problem. But if you don't like it anywhere along the net, try and find something you like and try and find that love within yourself, something that brings that love out in you, so that you can then start to understand what you are. And when they say know thyself, that's all it means. Know that you are love. There's nothing else you could be. Nothing else you could be. So take care. See you soon. Live for Love TV.
This is Live for Love TV. Live for Love TV. Yes, I am. One step more. One step more. One step more. Until you reach your goals. One step more. Save them soul. One step more. One step more. It is to reach the Live for Love TV. This is Live for Love TV.